This week in Jamaica, Parliament rolled out the red carpet as the 2026 through 2027 legislative year opened with pomp, pageantry, and political tension. But while lawmakers gathered inside Gordon House, outside Jamaicans were bracing for impact.
New tax coming that go affect us big time.
Especially the person who have kids going to school and getting a lower paid income, it's gonna really affect them a lot.
New taxes announced from sweetened drinks to tourism, part of $29 billion in revenue measures, and a nation in mourning. A 4-year-old girl shot dead in Manchester, a JDF soldier killed under still unclear circumstances in Kingston, and a mother of 6 brutally slain in Clarendon. Plus, remembering a legend, the voice that shaped generations, Barry G, the boogeyman. Jamaica officially began a new parliamentary chapter this week. The parliamentary year opened with Governor General Sir Patrick Allen delivering the throne speech at Gordon House, setting out the government's legislative priorities and national agenda for the months ahead. The ceremonial opening included traditional pageantry, the royal salute by the Jamaica Regiment, and inspection of the Guard of Honor, marking what is both a symbolic and practical start to the legislative year. One issue expected to return to the national spotlight is Jamaica's constitutional reform process. The proposed Republic Bill, which would move Jamaica away from the British monarchy, stalled during the previous parliamentary term amid political disagreements. The opposition had previously boycotted deliberations, insisting reforms should include ending ties to the UK-based Privy Council. Whether those reforms move forward this year remains a key question. At the same time, Parliament began reviewing government spending plans for the upcoming fiscal year, with the tabling of the estimates of expenditure, essentially the blueprint for how public funds will be allocated. And that leads to one of the biggest economic stories of the week.
Madam Speaker, this government has had the longest number of years of no new taxes in the history of independent Jamaica. Madam Speaker, only a Category 5 hurricane with winds of 185 miles per hour could have interrupted that.
The Holness administration signaled that Jamaicans should brace for new taxes and higher rates as the government moved to close a major fiscal gap created by Hurricane Melissa.
The proposed fiscal revenue measures target some areas that are currently undertaxed, such as digital services. Additionally, given Jamaica's commitment to environmental preservation, it is proposed that the Environmental Protection Levy revenues be increased to support the government's recovery efforts. The revenue enhancement also includes a tax on sweetened beverages, which are generally perceived as a threat to healthy lifestyle.
The package, estimated at about $29 billion, including roughly $18 billion in new taxes, was tied to the upcoming 2026 through 2027 budget, which is set to begin on April 1. Among the measures proposed, property taxes are expected to rise following a nationwide land revaluation by the National Land Agency, with new rates projected to take effect in the 2027 through 2028 fiscal year. Tourism operators could face an increase in General Consumption Tax (GCT) from 10% to 15% beginning April 1, 2027, a move the government projected could generate over $11 billion annually.
Digital services now form a growing share of everyday consumption by Jamaican households and businesses. Many of these services are supplied by non-resident providers with no physical presence in Jamaica, resulting in inconsistent application of GCT under existing arrangement. The rapid growth in digital transactions has highlighted gaps in the current tax framework. Similarly, services may be subject to different tax treatment depending on whether they're applied locally or from overseas, placing our domestic businesses at a competitive disadvantage. In addition, the shift towards untaxed digital consumption contributes to revenue leakage and reduces the government's capacity to fund public services. The proposed reform is guided by the destination principle, an internationally accepted standard for consumption taxation. Under this principle, GCT applies where a service is consumed rather than where the supplier is located. In practical terms, this means that digital services consumed in Jamaica should be subject to GCT in the same way as locally supplied equivalent services.
Taxes on alcohol and cigarettes are also proposed to increase, including a higher special consumption tax, SCT, on pure alcohol and cigarettes.
The Honourable House is being advised that the special consumption tax, SCT, on all alcoholic beverages will be increased from 1,230 per litre of pure alcohol to 1,400 per litre of pure alcohol. The current rate was established on March 13, 2017, many years ago, when the specific SCT increased from 1,120 to $1,230. Alcoholic beverages are subject to both the SCT and the GCT. The GCT is applied on an ad valorem basis at the standard rate of 15% at the point of sale. The proposed measure does not alter the GCT, but only adjusts the specific SCT component. The proposed increases will apply uniformly to locally manufactured and imported alcohol beverages, ensuring neutrality of treatment and maintaining consistency within the existing SCT framework. The next is increase in the special consumption tax on cigarettes. The Honourable House is being further advised that the SCT on cigarettes will also be increased by $3 per stick, moving the effective specific rate from $17 per stick to $20 per stick.
A new special consumption tax has been proposed for non-alcoholic sweetened beverages, expected to take effect in the first quarter of the new financial year, with the government projecting over $10 billion in revenue from that measure alone.
Non-alcoholic sweetened beverages are defined as all non-alcoholic beverages containing added sugar or other caloric sweeteners, as well as beverages containing artificial or non-nutritive sweeteners, whether carbonated or non-carbonated, and whether manufactured locally or imported. The primary objective of this measure is not only revenue mobilization, it also supports broader public health objectives. Jamaica continues to experience elevated levels of obesity and diabetes, and sweetened beverages are recognized as a significant source of extra sugar consumption. Any reduction in consumption resulting from the price adjustment would represent a positive supplementary outcome. Sweetened beverages are currently subject only to the standard GCT rate of 15% and are not presently listed in the Act as prescribed goods for SCT purposes. The proposed SCT will be assessed on a per unit basis, calculated based on the total liquid volume of each sweetened beverage measured in milliliters. The Honourable House is further advised that the SCT will apply at the point of manufacture for domestic producers and at the point of importation for imported products, in accordance with the provisions of the GCT Act. This ensures, Madam Speaker, administrative efficiency and parity between local and imported goods. The SCT will be applied at a rate of 0.02, which is 2 cents per milliliter. So for 300 milliliters beverage, it would be $6. For 600 milliliter beverage, it would be $12. And for a 2-liter beverage, it would be $40.
Another proposed change involves the public sector concession vehicles, where workers importing vehicles under the 20% duty concession would pay GCT if the measure is approved. Williams insisted the government was trying to balance revenue needs with fairness, seeing the most vulnerable would be protected, and that the measures were designed to be calibrated and sensitive to household and business realities. But the announcement sparked debate.
Before we get to Melissa, or even before we got to Beryl, it's important to remind the country that for the last 2 fiscal years, government's revenues have been struggling to meet government expenditures. And the government has relied for the last 2 fiscal years on 2 one-off transactions which have allowed the government to fund the budget. In 2023-24, the sale of 12 years of future revenues from the Norman Manley International Airport yielded $75 billion, which financed the 23-24 budget. For the 24-25 budget, the sale of future revenues, 10 years of future revenues of Donaldson-Sta Airport yielded $61 billion, which allowed the government to finance the 24-25 budget. I am making this point, Madam Speaker, to indicate that without Beryl, without Melissa, the government would have had to find some other asset to sell to meet the demands of the budget. I want to go to some of the measures, again, preliminary to what the ministers proposed. In relation to the special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened drinks, I know there is a public health imperative, a very big one. But I will say to you, I do not believe the price increases will change behavior. Hold on. And hold on. And the persons who are the greatest consumers are young children who go to basic school, primary school. And we need to change the culture. But when you look at the demand for these goods and the level of the increases, I would posit that it's a relatively inelastic demand, meaning that I don't believe that you're going to have much behavior change. Yeah. What I'm recommending, though, is that the 10 billion which you, and by your own measure, the fact that you anticipate to collect so much from this indicates that you don't really expect there to be a significant fall off in demand. Correct. But I would recommend that some of the monies that are collected from it, are invested and provided to the local agriculture industry so that natural juices, unsweetened natural juices, can be provided as alternatives to the sweetened drinks. And that the monies, the 10 billion, are not solely just put in the overall consolidated fund, but that we enhance our ability to provide the substitutes for it. Secondly, in relation to the environmental protection levy, again, my recommendation, the funds that we anticipate to collect from this goes into building greater resilience so that we can absorb some of those shocks that we naturally are going to have in the future, right? And when you look at you anticipate raising 3.6 billion from it. And we know that given the nature of climate change, we are likely to have future events that some of those resources be put to build resilience, whether it be in infrastructure, river training, other things.
Meanwhile, economist Keenan Faulkner said he was surprised the government moved toward new taxes so soon after a major national crisis. He argued that the conventional approach after such a shock is often to ease taxes to stimulate economic activity and speed up recovery. Though he acknowledged that if taxes are imposed, the government should focus on areas where demand is less likely to drop sharply. And on the streets, public opinion appeared split.
New tax come in, that go affect us big time.
Especially the person who have kids going to school and getting a low paid income, it's gonna really affect them a lot.
Like the sweet and beverage cigarette didn't affect me. I mean, those are things that kill people, so we might have a healthier Jamaica.
The tax on soda, I think that is appropriate because I really believe soda is unhealthy. The more it costs, the less we will drink it.
It's going to be the same. Anybody around the country has the same problem.
We have taxes on liquor already. So raising it is just going to, in a sense, upset people. It's going to make people have to reconsider how they're selling their products and all that kind of stuff.
So I really don't think it'll affect me that much because as it relates to like sugary stuff and alcohol, I don't drink alcohol. What was the other one? Cigarettes. I think for cigarettes it would affect a lot of people though because a lot of people kind of smoke and stuff like that. But I think it would benefit us in the long run. So I would be okay with them taxing those type of things.
The full budget debate is expected in March, where further details will emerge. This week also brought developments affecting Jamaicans beyond the island. The government strongly denied an overseas report claiming Jamaica had turned away a Cuban-registered tanker seeking gas supplies.
It's unfortunate that as minister had to instruct the ministry to send out a statement to refute the fake news in relation to the matter of oil and Cuba. I want to impress upon the well-thinking people of Jamaica that this can have serious international implications when this sort of fake news goes across the world. Please, I'm asking once again to listen out for the ministry and the government entities that have responsibility for disseminating information and only respond to that.
Meanwhile, Jamaica's Foreign Affairs Ministry confirmed it is monitoring the situation of Jamaican students studying in Cuba. Fuel shortages there, linked partly to geopolitical tensions affecting Venezuela's oil exports, have disrupted transportation, classes, and daily life. Some courses have moved online, while consular support remains available for affected students. Officials say they continue to assess conditions and provide assistance where necessary. Back home, security remained a major national concern this week. The Jamaica Constabulary Force has established a new specialized investigation branch known as the SIB, aimed at strengthening the country's ability to tackle complex, high-stakes, and sensitive criminal investigations. The unit, which falls under the Crime and Security portfolio, will use advanced investigative techniques along with enhanced intelligence and evidence-gathering capabilities to support major probes. According to the JCF, the move forms part of the ongoing modernization and transformation efforts designed to strengthen investigative capacity, close operational gaps, and reinforce institutional integrity, particularly in cases involving organized, transnational, and high-risk criminal activity. The new branch consolidates several specialized investigative units under a single command structure. These include the Fraud Squad and Financial Crimes Investigation Division, the National Strategic Anti-Gang Division, the Transnational Crime Investigation Division, the Jamaica Fugitive Apprehension Team, and the Legal and Quality Management Unit. Police say the restructuring is intended to improve coordination, enhance operational efficiency, strengthen oversight, and deliver a more intelligence-driven approach to crime fighting. The branch will also work closely with the Forensic Services Division to ensure investigations are supported by strong scientific, evidence-based methodologies. Authorities say the specialized investigation branch is expected to play a central role in disrupting organized criminal networks while strengthening collaboration with both local and international law enforcement partners. Meanwhile, a Jamaica Defense Force soldier was shot and killed in St. Andrew this week during a violent incident that also left a police officer with minor injuries. The deceased has been identified as 24-year-old Private Daniel Crawford of Bryan's Land in Spalding, Clarendon. Reports are that shortly after 9 p.m., Crawford was traveling with an off-duty police officer in a black BMW motorcar when the vehicle reportedly developed mechanical problems. The men stopped along the roadway and began attending to the vehicle. At some point, Crawford reportedly received a phone call and told the officer he needed to make a quick stop to drop off something to a female friend. The vehicle later stopped along Stevens Lane, where Crawford exited, leaving the policeman in the car. After several minutes without Crawford returning, the officer reportedly became concerned. During that time, a man approached the vehicle claiming Crawford was calling him. The officer reportedly followed the man toward the premises along Stevens Lane. However, the situation quickly escalated. The officer reportedly became suspicious and resisted attempts to pull him inside the premises. The man allegedly drew a firearm, prompting the officer to discharge his service weapon before fleeing, while gunshots were reportedly fired behind him. A subsequent police search led to the discovery of Private Crawford suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was rushed to hospital but later pronounced dead. Police have since launched a major investigation into the killing. Two men listed as persons of interest have surrendered to investigators, while authorities are still searching for three others. They are a woman known only as Kim and two men identified as Shane and Kevan, also called Briscoe, believed to be from the Kingston 13 area. The Jamaica Defense Force has expressed deep sadness over Crawford's passing, extending condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues. Meanwhile, the incident has sparked public discussion and some controversy, with questions being raised about the exact circumstances surrounding the stop on Stevens Lane and whether additional details will emerge about the confrontation that reportedly unfolded there. Questions have also surfaced about reports that the police officer discharged his firearm during the incident, specifically whether anyone was struck and what the status of that individual may be. Authorities from both the JDF and the Jamaica Constabulary Force say investigations remain ongoing and are urging the public to allow the process to unfold as they work to establish the full facts. And now to Clarendon, where a shocking domestic violence incident has left a community grieving and a family shattered. Residents of usually quiet Glenmuir Drive in Maypen are still coming to terms with the brutal killing of 46-year-old caregiver Jennifer Williamson, who police say was allegedly attacked inside her home Sunday night. According to reports, about 10:30 p.m., Williamson was inside a bedroom with her spouse when her 12-year-old son reportedly heard her screaming for help. The child tried to enter the room but found the door locked. Police say the alleged suspect later exited the room and fled the scene with what appeared to be a machete. The boy then reportedly discovered his mother suffering from severe chop wounds and ran through the streets seeking help. Williamson was rushed to hospital but was pronounced dead. The incident has deeply shaken the community. Residents describe hearing the child crying for help and say the traumatic experience has left many emotionally affected. Investigators believe the attack may have stemmed from a long-standing domestic dispute. Residents say tensions had been building for some time, reportedly linked to living arrangements at the home and ongoing relationship conflicts. Police have identified the main suspect, known as Tony Thompson, a fruit vendor from the area, and are urging him to turn himself in immediately. Authorities are also appealing to anyone with information about his whereabouts to contact the Maypen police as investigations continue. Meanwhile, Clarendon has been rocked by another deadly shooting this week, leaving a mother and daughter dead and a community on edge. Police say 61-year-old Norma Spence and her 41-year-old daughter Carrie Scott were shot and killed at a bar in Rocky Point Monday night. The attack happened shortly before 9 p.m. A third person was injured and remains hospitalized. The double killing has shaken the fishing community and comes amid heightened concern about violent crime in the parish. Residents say the back-to-back tragedies have heightened the fear across the area, especially as the latest attack comes only months after a triple murder in Clarendon late last year, for which a suspect has since been arrested and charged. Police say investigations into both recent incidents remain ongoing. A 4-year-old girl is among the latest victims of gun violence in Jamaica after a deadly shooting this week in Manchester left the child dead and her father injured. Police have identified the child as Sania O'Brien of Woodstock, Manchester. Reports indicate that Sunday afternoon, Sania and her father were traveling in a black Toyota Voxy in the community of Land Settlement Williamsfield when armed men reportedly ambushed the vehicle and opened fire. Both occupants were shot and rushed to the Mandeville Regional Hospital, where Sania was pronounced dead. Her father, a car dealer, remains hospitalized. His condition has not been publicly disclosed. The killing has sparked strong condemnation. Manchester Central Member of Parliament Rhoda Moy Crawford described the incident as tragic and is urging residents to work closely with the police to improve safety in the area.
Innocent child, of course, we mourn with the family. The senior minister will be speaking some more on this issue, but as member of parliament, I just want to assure my constituents that the police are in control. They are fully aware of what has been taking place.
Children's advocate Diane Gordon Harrison also expressed deep sadness over the child's death, calling attention to the devastating impact of violence on Jamaica's children.
Of course, it is of great concern whenever we hear about children dying in tragic circumstances. 4 years, life really hasn't even fully begun yet, and so this to me represents a severe loss in terms of the potential of this little girl. And also, it's a stark reminder of just how much violence continues to be a part of the fabric of our society. So I express my deepest condolences to her family, to her loved ones, to her teachers, and in fact the members of her community who have been so severely impacted by her loss. The Office of the Children's Advocate stands with the family, and we just urge, anyone who has any information at all to cooperate with the police so that there can be justice for this little girl.
Police have launched a full investigation into the attack. As of early February, the Manchester Police Division had already recorded several murders, adding to concerns about rising violence in the parish. And finally this week, Jamaica continues to honor the life and legacy of legendary broadcaster Barrington Barry G. Gordon. Family, friends, and colleagues gathered at a Thanksgiving service in St. Andrew to celebrate the veteran radio personality whose voice became a defining part of Jamaican culture for decades. Minister of Culture and Entertainment Olivia Grange reflected that although Barry G is gone, his voice and influence will continue to resonate across the nation. She described him as more than a broadcaster, calling him a storyteller who used music to capture Jamaica's struggles, triumphs, and cultural identity. Tributes poured in from across the entertainment and media industries, performances from Nadine Sutherland, Carlene Davis, Peter Lloyd, and the Kingston College Choir highlighted the deep respect he commanded within Jamaica's music community. Colleagues recalled his passion for radio, his distinctive style, and the famous moment he embraced the nickname the Boogeyman, a persona that helped cement his legendary status on Jamaican airwaves. Close friend and broadcaster David Rodigan praised Barry G's charisma, humor, and ability to connect with listeners, while family members reflected on his dedication, mentorship, and enduring impact on those closest to him. Barry G passed away on October 29, 2025 at age 69 after a period of illness. Many say his legacy will live on through the music, memories, and inspiration he leaves behind. And that's This Week in Jamaica, your weekly Jamaica News recap. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in the comments, and be sure to join us again for more news. From all of us here, have a great week and stay safe.